Hello everybody and welcome to Mr. Saucedo's YouTube videos. Today we're going to be going over lesson 4, which is about habitats and niches. So before we actually start with anything, let's go over some definitions. We've already talked about habitats, but that was a long time ago. Like that was all the way back in August or September. So really the question here though is, what are the effects of competition on a species niche? And we never really talked about what a niche was. So let's remind ourselves what a habitat is so that we can kind of contrast them from one another. So a habitat is all of the abiotic and biotic factors in a species environment. And so do you remember what abiotic means and biotic? So remember, abiotic are any non-living things and biotic are any living things, right? And remember, ecosystems are made up of the biotic and abiotic factors that are in a general area. So really, a habitat is answering the question, where does a species live? So where would you expect to find a bat, right? Like where is a bat's natural habitat? So depending on what type of bat it is, there's a bunch of different habitats, but primarily you'd probably say something like a cave, right? That's probably what would come to mind. Or like a lion, right? Like where would you expect to find a lion? Currently probably on a savanna somewhere, right? Or what about like, a gigantic snake like this? Well, it's green, so it probably lives in trees, which means it probably has to live in some sort of tropical area. Otherwise, its green coloring probably doesn't make a lot of sense. Seagulls, even though they're named seagulls, they actually are land birds, right? So they are found on beaches primarily. So here is a wonderful diagram that shows the annual precipitation of an area in centimeters and the average annual temperature in degrees Celsius here at the bottom. And so these are all of the major biomes and they're sorted by annual precipitation and average temperature. So what do we notice here? You have this diagram in your notes. Please label it, right? So label these. And then it'd probably be helpful if you color code them in some way so that they're different so that you can tell what they are. So what do you notice? Obviously, right, tundra has the least amount of precipitation and also is the coldest. The one that has the most is tropical rainforest. It's the warmest and it also has the most rain or the most precipitation, right? So we in Southern California are right here in this chaparral kind of area, or Mediterranean vegetation is the other word that we kind of used to describe it. But just, you can pause this, take a look at it, label it though, and make sure that you color code it to some degree. All right, so next up, we've got a niche. So finally, we can talk about what a niche is. A niche is just a species function within its habitat. Every species has a role to play. And so the question is, what role does your species particularly play? So there are 3 essential elements that we really want to think about whenever we're looking at a niche. And the first one is all food-related questions. So when it comes to food, what are we going to be asking? Well, what does it eat? What eats it, right? Like we want to know where it is on the food chain. Does it exist somewhere in an area where it is going to be prey, where it's going to be a predator, where it's going to be both predator and prey? Is it a generalist? Is it a specialist? What does it eat, right? So like, does it eat only one thing or does it generalize and does it eat many different things? How does it compete for food? Does it have direct competition with another species? Does it have a direct competition with its own species? Where does it fit in the food web? Again, what eats it? Where does it go, right? And so, if we have something like a snake like this, what do we think eats it? What does it eat, right? Like, so, you can generally ask yourselves these questions. Is it a generalist or is it a specialist? Does it compete for food? Where does it fit in the food web, right? But we can brainstorm a bunch of possibilities there. But again, like, it's different for each animal or each species or each organism. Okay. Next up, behavior. What time of day is it active, right? Is it going to be awake at night? Is it going to be awake only during the day? Is it a dawn or dusk kind of organism? How does it interact with its own species? Is it friendly? I mean, most organisms of the same species are going to be friendly with one another, but like, some species spend most of their lives without even seeing another of their species, like a snow leopard or something. How does it interact with other species? Does it have a symbiotic relationship with other species? Does it work together to hunt? When and where does it reproduce? Again, all of these are behavioral things. And if any of these sound kind of familiar to you, maybe it's because when we were going over evolution, we talked about how different types of isolation help to lead to different species forming, right? So, you've got pack animals like wolves. We've got schools of fish. Salmon reproduce at a very particular time in very particular locations. Necessities: how much water does it need? What temperature range can it survive in? What oxygen level does it need? Again, some of these are related to what we just showed on in the previous couple of slides, right? Where we're looking at like what biome does it survive in, right? Tropical rainforest. Is it a tundra? Is it taiga? Is it a savanna? How adaptive is it, right? Like, can it relate? Can it relate? Can it adapt to change well, or is it just going to be very difficult for it if you put it in a new environment for it to be able to adapt to those changes? There are 3 ways of grouping when an animal is active, and that kind of takes us back to that behavioral part. So nocturnal animals are active mostly at night. Again, you can think of things like wolves or owls. Diurnal is the term that we use for things that are active mostly during the day. Again, most birds, not owls obviously, but most birds are diurnal. We are diurnal. Crepuscular, these are active mostly at dawn and dusk. And so there are certain types of bugs, like there are certain gnats and things like that are crepuscular. Raccoons are a great example of a nocturnal animal. Hawks are a great example of a diurnal animal. And then crepuscular things, these little beetles here, are relatively crepuscular.